International Energy Agency and the European Commission on coping with the energy crisis and how to increase resilience in small businesses in Europe through energy efficiency. I'm Jethro Mullen, Editor-in-Chief in the IEA's communications team, and I'm joined here today by European Commissioner for Energy Kadri Simpson, IEA Executive Director Fatih Birol, as well as leaders from government, business and labour organisations. We'll start today's conversation with Brian Motherway, the IEA's Head of Energy Efficiency, who is going to set the scene for us. Over to you, Brian.
Thank you, Jethro. And let me also add my warm welcome to everybody this morning, particularly to our distinguished speakers, but also everybody who is joining us online for what is a very important discussion, but one that comes at a really crucial time. Right across Europe, we see really high prices for all types of energy and for many related commodities. And we know all of us as energy consumers in our businesses, in our homes, in our daily lives are really feeling the pressure of the high prices. And that's why it's so important that we're talking about energy efficiency in terms of the relief it can give us right now by lowering our bills in our businesses, in our homes. But of course, it's a central importance to our remaining urgent challenges around climate, and particularly the pathway to net zero. And the IEA has already shown many times the central importance of energy efficiency on the pathway to global net zero energy systems, particularly now, particularly in this decade where we must lead with energy efficiency across so many areas. And governments know this, and that's why they are already responding. And we're pleased to see many governments focusing on energy efficiency, particularly in recent actions related to government recovery spending coming out of COVID. And of course, the kind of actions we're seeing this year, whether it's Inflation Reduction Act in the UK, Fit for 55 and REPowerEU here in Europe, and many other actions across the world in Japan and in many other jurisdictions. Now, of course, today's focus is on small business, and this is an absolutely crucial sector, and I'm really pleased we've gathered so many people to talk about this today. It's such an important sector for all of us here in Europe in terms of the importance to all of us in our lives and families where our friends and families are employed, where we are employed, in terms of its economic and social contribution. And it's important to note that so many European businesses are already responding really strongly and proactively on energy efficiency, looking at how they can reduce their energy demand, looking at how they can lower their costs, lower their environmental footprint. And that is showing us that a lot can be achieved very quickly and very significantly through energy efficiency. And learning from that, learning from all of the actions that so many businesses across Europe have already taken in recent months and years, that's why today we're very pleased to be here launching, along with the European Commission, new guidance that draws on best practices from businesses right across Europe, where we can see the kind of actions that governments can take, but also the kind of actions that businesses themselves can take, whether it's in terms of looking at where energy is used and how to control it better, the central importance of involving employees and workforces in these discussions and in these actions, and of course, the real opportunity to introduce more efficient, newer, better technologies, as well as to take many measures that may seem small in terms of maintenance, housekeeping, optimization, but have been shown by so many businesses across Europe can really save energy, really reduce energy costs, and really can help businesses stay afloat, stay competitive in these difficult times. So we're really looking forward to the discussion today that will bring so many perspectives and hopefully allow us to move forward together in this important area. We are very keen to continue working with all of our partners in this space, and thank you again for joining us.
Thank you very much, Brian, for setting the scene. We're now very pleased to hear from Commissioner Kadri Simpson, European Commissioner for Energy. The floor is yours, Commissioner.
Thank you, and thank you, Brian, for good introduction, and good morning to everyone from Brussels. I am very glad to see good colleagues and partners joining us today to discuss something I consider truly important. The energy situation of Europe has been challenging for more than a year. It started with rising prices and Russian manipulation with gas storage last autumn, and developed into a full-blown crisis with Russia's invasion of Ukraine. A key part of our response to this crisis has been the renewed emphasis on energy efficiency and savings. The latter is crucial for our resilience in the short term. Russian gas flows have dropped drastically, and we can face a full disruption of Russian gas any moment. 155 BCM of gas cannot be replaced overnight, so using less must be our priority. As you know, we proposed and the member states agreed to reduce gas consumption from August to March next year by 15%. And looking beyond this winter, being more efficient and using less energy will be instrumental for our energy security, as we are phasing out Russian gas for good. But it will also be crucial for our climate goals and for keeping the energy costs manageable. This winter and the next, it will be difficult for everyone, and smaller companies are especially vulnerable, with many of them still reeling from the impact of the coronavirus pandemic. High energy prices and supply uncertainty are creating further pressure on their survival. Small and medium-sized companies represent 99% of all businesses in the EU. They employ over 800 million people, account for more than half of Europe's GDP, and play a key role in every sector of the economy. If they are not thriving, neither is the European economy nor European people. So the importance and the need to support businesses, in particular SMEs, was also highlighted in the tripartite social summit this week, where President von der Leyen announced an SME relief package to be presented in the second half of the next year. Since October last year, the Commission has brought forward a number of initiatives to support those who struggle to pay their energy bills. And just to name two, we published a toolbox of measures that member states can use to help households and businesses. And this autumn, we presented an emergency intervention when member states can temporarily set a price for electricity to SMEs. And this measure has already entered in force. The price can exceptionally and temporarily be set even below cost. And there will be other steps to come as part of the new package of measures we presented this Tuesday. We proposed to redirect up to 40 billion euros of EU cohesion funds to help citizens and small businesses. And we're also finalizing an amendment to the temporary crisis framework for state aid to give member states more leeway to support companies. But one of the most effective ways to support SMEs in mitigating energy costs and supply risks is by helping them to reduce energy consumption, both in the short and long term. For example, a recent study found that installing smart meters and using the data to monitor their energy usage allowed SMEs to reduce their energy use by up to 40% through low or no cost measures. And there are already a number of funds and resources available in the EU that SMEs can access for this purpose. And to make sure that information is simple to find, we will publish an easy to read overview on our website. And I am very encouraged to see that the vast majority of member states have adopted measures to boost energy savings in our buildings and industries. But more can be done also to specifically support smaller companies. So I am very excited to hear from ministers and about their experiences, and from the representatives of SMEs themselves, from the unions and energy agencies, that has worked so well so far, and where we have more work to do. And I'm grateful to IEA and you, Dr. Birol, for organizing this event with us today and lending your analytical expertise to already have some useful materials ready that can help SMEs to reduce their energy consumption and costs. And if we all join our forces, national, regional and local governments and financial institutions, employee and employer organizations and energy agencies, we can support SMEs in these difficult times. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Commissioner. I'd now like to pass the floor to the IEA Executive Director, Fatih Birol, So Dr. Birol, over to you.
Thank you very much. Madam Commissioner, thank you very much for your remarks, and also thank you very much for all your great efforts in these difficult times in Europe and beyond. It is also very nice to see Minister Gevester as well. I live many years in Austria. I know how important the small businesses are for economy and for employment for that very country. So, dear colleagues, we are coming close, slowly but surely to winter, even though we are lucky to enjoy still some good weather. It is a very good news for all European citizens. But of course, it doesn't change the very fact that this winter will be a difficult one. 24th of February was the invasion of Ukraine by Russia. 1 week, only 1 week later, IEA came up with a 10-point plan, and we made some recommendations to governments. For example, it was one of them was a temperature, the thermostat bring it 2 degrees lower. Another one was give a big push for heat pumps. The other one was the cutting the red tape for the renewables. Our suggestions at that time, 1 week after the invasion, found a bit radical, to be frank, by some governments, but we are very happy to see that the governments are today, thanks to also the great work of Commission, are adopting similar or the same measures, preparing us for this winter. We have more than 90% of our gas storages full, and we hope that this winter, we will go through this winter with some bruises, economic and social bruises in our countries, but we should be able to come to February, March. Of course, this time our storage levels will go down 25, 30%. Then starts the next our period to fill that storage once again for the next winter. Here, as Madam Commissioner mentioned, the key word is saving gas, saving energy across the economy. But from our point of view, one area that we need to focus from a social point of view, from an economic point of view, from the energy point of view is small businesses. They are extremely important for the economy of the several different layers of the population, their daily lives and their employment. It's just middle of our daily lives. So it is the reason, together with our colleagues from the Commission, we have prepared pragmatic, easy to implement recommendations first for the governments. How governments can help small businesses to save energy with some clear, easy to implement incentives with some important measures. Second, we also have some suggestions and recommendations for the small business owners themselves, how they can reorganize sometimes with some easy touches here and there, and also educating training their workers save energy. Our analysis show that with some measures, with no cost, we can save about 30% of the energy costs in small businesses. So this is huge. Even if we didn't have this current crisis, this is a good news because we keep the money in our pocket and we have our fight against climate change. So therefore, I would like to thank my colleagues, Brian Motherway and his team and his counterpartners in the European Commission for preparing this easy to implement, pragmatic suggestion how governments can help the small businesses and how the small businesses can help themselves to save money, save energy. And I hope that in the next months to come, the governments in Europe and beyond can look at these recommendations and implement them. I would like to finish by saying that when I presented the first 10-point plan of the IEA in 1st of March, which were found radical but not implemented, I was not very hopeful that the governments will make use of that. But now I am more hopeful that the governments take the energy efficiency as a key issue, and hopefully they will make use of that. So with this, once again, many thanks to Madam Commissioner, once again, together with us, pushing this agenda forward, and also wishing the Minister Gevesta and all the other ministers for implementing those measures. Thank you, and back to you, Mr. Mellon.
Thank you very much, Dr. Birol. For the next part of the discussion, as you just mentioned, we're very pleased to be able to turn to Minister Leonor Gevesta, Austria's Federal Minister for Climate Action, Environment, Energy, Mobility, Innovation and Technology, to tell us about the importance of small businesses in Austria and what the government is doing to help energy efficiency in small business. Minister Gevesta, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me, for the friendly welcome to this debate, and simply for organizing this event, because it comes at a highly relevant time, as I think I've said that previously in many of the IEA events, that you're very cutting edge with the topics and the reports that you publish in these challenging times. And so thanks a lot for these initiatives. Thank you also to Kadri for setting the scene, because I don't think there's any council formation in Europe that meets as often as the energy ministers at these times. And we all share the same challenges. And we all were focused very much in the beginning of this crisis on filling up storages. So of course, as a Minister of Energy in Austria, I'm very happy that we're now at 87% of gas storage filling, because that's a security buffer. But the biggest challenge is to become independent of Russian fossil fuels, of Russian gas in the Austrian case, very specifically. And so we made a plan. It has 3 pillars, how to do that. And so pillar number 1 is, of course, we need to diversify. We need to have other suppliers, because for the time being, even though Austria is extremely ambitious on the climate action side, we still need gas. The second pillar is to become truly independent, meaning we go renewable. And so it's good news that for Austria, 2022 will be an absolute record-breaking year in renewables deployment. Our goal is 100% renewable electricity by 2030. And if you look at our PV numbers, we are above the target for this year that we need to reach the 2030 goal. So it's really absolute record-breaking renewables year. That's one of the few good news that we have from this situation. But the third pillar, and we tend not to talk about it so often, but the third pillar of this plan is to save gas and to save energy. And we will not manage without this extremely important pillar on efficiency. And so I'm really very thankful for the focus you give this topic time and again, and now for the focus for today's debate to put it on SMEs, because Fatih has mentioned it, and you've mentioned it before also in your introduction, that Austria is an especially high rate SME structured in its economy. So there are around 337,000 businesses that are SMEs, representing 99.65% of our businesses. And so, of course, if we talk efficiency in business, we actually talk SME. And so it's really encouraging to hear how big the potential is, especially in challenging times like these, to do something for the climate. Yes, that's an underlying goal, and efficiency helps that. But to save energy, the more we save, the more in the end is there for everybody of us. And to bring down costs, and the numbers you've just cited, Fatih, are really motivating and the positive outlook for everybody working on this front. So what are we doing in Austria? 3 quick examples. So the one thing we do is coming historically more from the climate action, but becomes now a really important tool to drive down cost and to help our energy security. We to enable SMEs, because especially in the SME field, we see that it's the access to energy efficiency, both in their most of them are too small to have dedicated offices dealing with the issue. The access to knowledge, to tools on energy efficiency is not as upfront for many of the companies as maybe for some of the bigger ones. So we support the implementation of energy management systems in SMEs, building up energy know-how so that they are actually equipped with the tools they need to monitor energy consumption and to bring down energy consumption, because it allows them to identify opportunities, and we support it financially. And we have a second stream of funding that's now subsidized. We increased it a lot also during the crisis, now in the crisis, that brings a budget of 180 million euro per year. The biggest part of this goes into efficiency measures, as well as some projects using renewable heat, leads to, of course, and supports this change, leading to less energy consumption, leading also to less greenhouse gases. But we see there that SMEs hold a share of more than 85% in all subsidized projects. But you even see it from this number, it's below the actual share of SMEs in the industry or in the overall society. So we have the German word is Bringschuld. I have, sorry to say, no idea how to translate it into English at the moment. We have a task to bring energy efficiency closer to SMEs. And so really thanks a lot for this guideline and for the effort you put on the issue. The third pillar we have is that we work a lot, and I personally work a lot with initiatives and also with the trade unions and the Chamber of Labor, because I think it's crucial in energy efficiency to bring employees on board, to make them part of this journey, to make them part of this task. And so that's a third work stream that we do. And so there was a lot of carrot. There's also a bit of stick in the policy we do this year. We support companies in Austria at the different levels with high energy bills in order for them to tackle them and to actually survive. I'm sorry for putting it so bluntly, the cost challenge that we face. So thanks a lot, Kadri, for announcing that you're working on making that easier in the state aid framework. That's really good news for many of us. And so we said, okay, we support, we see, we need support, but we don't want to support this year energy, spoiling energy, wasting energy. So we tied the support to energy efficiency audits for the bigger companies and for all of them to very concrete energy saving measures. So no lighting inside, outside during the night, no heating the outside with, I don't know if that's correct translation, heated swamplings that you put out in front of to just heat the surrounding area, closed business doors. It's really simple measures but we really made them also compulsory to make sure in this very dense year we don't waste energy. So the final point, thanks a lot again for putting this initiative, for trying, as we all do, to make energy efficiency as easy, as accessible, as attractive as possible. And so a pleasure to be here and to share how we try to do it and to learn from all of you how you approach the issue. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Minister Gewässer, for sharing the perspective from Austria. Now to look in more detail at the challenges for SMEs, small businesses in the current crisis and the role of energy efficiency in addressing them, I'd like to turn to Veronique Willems, the Secretary General of SME United. SME United is the Association of Crafts and Small and Medium Enterprises in Europe, with around 70 member organizations from over 30 countries. Veronique, over to you.
Thank you, and first of all, thank you also for the invitation to this very timely and important event today. I really appreciate the importance that all previous speakers have already attached to small companies in Europe. I would like to add even more what Minister Gewessler said. So 99.8% of the companies in Europe are small companies. I would like to even add an additional element to that. 93% of all our companies in Europe have less than 10 employees. And that also immediately frames the context in which an entrepreneur is working. The average number of employees is around 4, which means that the entrepreneur during the day or during business hours is working with his or her team to provide us consumers with quality products and services. And in the evening, when staff goes home, because we also have a work-life balance at the European level, a directive on that, the entrepreneur is also tasked with checking which rules they have to comply with, how they will implement those rules in their company to comply with the rules, and also make sure that they manage the company and tackle the different challenges. And I think we all agree that the past few years, we've all had our share of challenges to deal with. Was already mentioned, the pandemic crisis has kept us busy. I always try to see the positive things as well. The pandemic crisis has also accelerated the digital transition for many small companies. And I think not only small companies, I believe that this meeting would never have happened in this format 3 or 4 years ago. So this is already a sign that we have transitioned in the digital. To look at it from a positive perspective on what has been happening the past few months, I think it also pushes us in the energy transition, and that we're also making big steps forward on that perspective. Nevertheless, the SME barometer that we published as SME United last week clearly shows that the hope our companies had to be out of the pandemic situation has completely been taken down by the escalating energy prices, the high inflation, and the continued disruptions in the supply chain, especially also in the energy supply. The spike in prices are a major concern to our companies and even threaten their further existence. So I think, Minister Gewessler, what you put forward on their survival is not something you are exaggerating. Many of the companies in industry and also small businesses are reducing their activities or halting them completely. Moreover, the shutdown or the relocation of industry at the moment will also have an impact on the small companies in their value chain, in their supply chain. And that goes further than only subcontractors or suppliers. That also goes towards the service providers and even what you might find a small impact on the sandwich bar at the corner, but also they will have an impact when big companies leave the European Union. So this whole activity will also have an impact on the incomes and the jobs of workers and households. And therefore we say that measures at the moment have to, on the one hand, of course, support households who are in a vulnerable position, but on the other hand, certainly also the small companies, because that goes hand in hand. We get more and more SMEs now as well that are raising the difficulty of having to conclude new energy contracts, where of course now the fixed price contracts with better prices are ending, and they are confronted with proposals that are 1,000% more expensive. I fully agree with Commissioner Simpson on the energy efficiency and that we have to make our steps there, especially if we want to achieve the midterm goals set in the Fit for 55 and the Green Deal or proposed in those things, in those initiatives. However, we also have to take into account the limits that our SMEs are facing at the moment. And I would like to go back to the pandemic. During the pandemic, many of our SMEs have invested their savings to keep their company afloat, keep their workers on board. So many of them are now over-indebted and do not have resources anymore to make the necessary upfront investments to make energy efficiency investments. So on that perspective, I would like to call on Commission and Member States to provide the necessary instruments for access to finance. And I'm thinking, for instance, on the National Recovery and Resilience Plans, where many Member States have proposed measures on green transition, on energy transition. However, we also see that in many member states, those funds are already completely used. So we would like to have a look where there is still possibility to review measures, that these can be reviewed and resources can be flexibly reoriented. We're also looking at the InvestEU, where the SME window has already been completely oversubscribed. On the other hand, the sustainability window is way too complex for small companies to apply. So also there we might have to have a look on how to move forward. That's on the investment part. Secondly, I think we also need to have a look, and it was tackled also last night in the summit, on permits. If you want to work on energy efficiency, you have to make sure that permits are given in a reasonable time so that companies can move forward. Also making sure that the targets we put at national and at European level are clear and now also finally decided, because a company will not decide to make investments as long as they don't know what they're working towards. For 2030, we really urgently have to make a final decision on what the targets will be, because companies need to take their investment decisions today. Then a final element is what was also tackled by Minister Gewessler on know-how and skills. Our entrepreneurs are managing their company, have skills in their field of activity, but many don't have knowledge on energy efficiency, energy transition, and so on. Providing neutral information on available technology and on the energy management systems, as you mentioned, is crucial. And for that, we need member states, regional level, European level to work together and also cooperate with the SME organizations where SMEs turn to for first advice. So it's also crucial to build capacity with the organizations that are close to entrepreneurs so that they have the first information and can refer afterwards to more expert advice if necessary. A second element is the skills development of staff and entrepreneurs. And what we see is that, for instance, for energy efficiency of buildings, energy efficiency measures in general, and also energy transition towards renewable energies, that we have a huge lack of skilled staff in those fields. So it will be crucial to update the curricula in the schools and ensure that we can have a good up and reskilling of our employees and of people who are looking for a job, to make sure that we can fulfill the requests in the market. I will leave it to that, but of course, I'm very happy to further reply to questions later on. Thank you.
Thank you, Veronique, for those insights. They're really valuable for this discussion. And so now, as we've discussed today, that there are over 80 million people employed in small businesses in Europe, and each of these employees is a vital ally in helping businesses to achieve energy savings and energy efficiency. Plamen Dimitrov is the president of the Bulgarian Confederation of Independent Trade Unions, with 35 trade union members representing over 300,000 Bulgarian workers and employees from various fields of activity and professions. So Plamen, welcome. I'd like to ask you to comment on the role of workers in achieving energy savings goals in small businesses. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for giving me the floor. Small and medium-sized enterprises contribute to a sustainable economy that creates quality jobs, as you said, about 80 million, above 93% of employment in Europe, but also provide a stronger bond to societies, often combining economic and social functions, and thus strengthen the foundation of democracy, unity, and inclusion. They are essential to economic and social recovery and well-being, with their presence at the local level, and especially in remote and rural areas. It's in my country, but not only, where they're often the only factor, the only employer that generates economic activities and employment. For example, SMEs play an important role in the implementation of energy efficiency policies and the application of the new technologies in the last 10 years. They have extensive involvement in energy efficiency programs for buildings, municipalities, and enterprises, including competence for energy audits and certification. They are the main unit for technology transfer in the entry of modern combustion technologies, heat pumps, solar panels, rooftop photovoltaic and digital applications for home and businesses. At the same time, a significant part of SMEs face difficulties due to the complexity of constantly evolving legislative acts, financial rules, and high costs, lack of specific enterprise and knowledge of the environment where choosing the right actions, accompanied by difficulties in accessing new value chains, finance, personnel, and new business models, among all other challenges. For example, a large number of SMEs in Bulgaria, my country, were brought to the free electricity market. Just to explain what is that, is the only country, my country is the only country in Europe where we have so-called protected market, energy market for households, which is not the free one, it's a regulated. And all the enterprises were there. And 2 years ago, SMEs were brought to the free markets, which coincided with the development of the wave of crisis. And now they're suffering a lot since the free market prices and the regulated prices in my country deferred 3, 4, up to 5 times. So you can imagine how the SMEs are together with some other vulnerable consumers trying to survive in this environment. It is now clear that the problems of SMEs are depending significantly due to the energy crisis and the war in Ukraine, which hinders their competitiveness more and more. Systemic issues for their development includes lack of information about the ever-changing legislative requirements aimed at achieving climate neutrality and how to respond to them. Lack of resources for greening and compliance with the legislation to successfully implement the transition to a carbon neutral economy, and insufficient cohesion within the industry, and of course not involvement in many SMEs in the social dialogue, social partnership, and not represented in a collective bargaining, at least in many countries in Eastern Europe. My organization pays special attention to the state of small and medium-sized enterprises and proposes measures for involvement. And due to the extraordinary circumstances, we believe that Bulgaria has grounds to insist on appropriate flexibility in timetables for the implementation of European Green Deal objectives in time until the end of the crisis, while ensuring that the long-term objectives are not abandoned. An important element for SMEs now is the need to provide price protection, for example, by introducing a regulated electricity tariff or ceiling that includes small consumers up to 200 megawatts per hour per year, as well as delaying liberalization plans that further burden these businesses with additional costs. Accelerating the start of the measures under the National Plan for Recovery and Resilience and the specific funding and MFF, multi-annual financial framework, creating targeted forms for participation for SMEs, for switching to alternative fuels from gas and coal, for solutions in the area of the circular economy and digitalization are very important. We have to point out that the programs under the Bulgarian National Recovery and Resilience Plans are reasonably delayed, and this leads to severe economic negatives for SMEs mainly. An important, someone tried to interfere here. We believe, at the end, to say, we believe that the involvement of SMEs in collective bargaining and guaranteeing the protection of incomes for those working for them will ensure economic and social sustainability, both for businesses planning with longer horizons, but also for the people, for the workers to feel more protected and in such a very uncertain times to feel at least much better than they feel now. So thank you very much for now, and I'm ready to answer some questions there.
Thanks a lot, Barman, for providing us with the point of view of workers in this situation. So when we try to improve energy efficiency, it is critical that we bring all the relevant stakeholders on board. This is particularly true in small businesses, which are so varied in nature. A key stakeholder for both small businesses and governments throughout the EU are the local and regional energy agencies. So I'm now turning to Seamus Hoyne, the Secretary General of FEDEREN. FEDEREN is the main European network of regional and local organizations that implement, coordinate, and facilitate energy and environment policies. It has more than 80 members in 25 European countries. Seamus will tell us about the challenges facing small businesses and what must be done to help them in conjunction with the energy agencies. Seamus, the floor is yours.
Good morning, and thank you very much for the introduction, and thank you to all the other speakers for their valuable insights. And I concur with the majority of their points, and it is really encouraging to see this focus on SMEs, enterprises and business. As you said, FEDEREN represents energy agencies right across Europe, and we are working every day with the public and private sectors, and indeed with communities, to deliver on the energy transition. There are over 2,500 staff working in energy agencies across Europe at the front line of working with people to try and translate European and global ambitions in terms of energy transition, decarbonisation into reality. And I suppose we have a very strong sense of the challenges that the organisations that we work with. And I think it was really important, the comments that were made, that the people that work in SMEs live in their communities. They are a core part of the socio-economic fabric of our communities and of our regions. So as well as working with households, with public sector, the SMEs are a really critical part of our economy and our society. Energy agencies translate the ambitions of, for example, the Energy Efficiency Directive, the Renewable Energy Directive, the Repower EU into reality on the ground. And we try to mobilize funding through, for example, the Life Clean Energy Transition Programme to deliver services into our regions. And recently, in connection with the Repower EU initiative, we've been gathering examples and case studies from our members across Europe of how we can address these critical challenges in terms of security of supply and decarbonisation, as well as supporting the sustainability of the businesses and enterprises across Europe. And I think the IEA's guide and guides coming from the European Commission and indeed the member states' national energy agencies really need to emphasise the fact that the immediate focus has to be on trying to eliminate as much waste from the processes and the organizations as possible. And they can be very much focused on low cost, no cost measures. For example, looking at the tariffs within their energy supply, their maintenance schedules, behavior change measures, so training and supporting their staff. Simple measures such as cleaning their equipment, lighting, etc. are very important. And in many industries that are involved in manufacturing sectors such as compressed air, a litre of air leaking results in significant kilowatt hours of energy and CO2 emissions. So simple measures to look at your systems and your production facilities are very important. And these can be done already by your existing staff with very limited interventions from outside. A critical part that was mentioned is that the SME owners and the businesses are very busy running their businesses. They may not have the energy data available to them to allow them to project where they need to focus their efforts. So there have been developed many tools that exist that allow SMEs to measure their energy consumption and then to make business decisions on where to put their efforts and to target their specific interventions or investments, or to target where they can get subsidies and supports to implement those measures. Critically, and I absolutely concur, that the need for independent advice. So energy agencies across Europe are independent organizations, so they provide independent advice to their SMEs, and this needs to be scaled up so that the SMEs are confident and understand the decisions that they have to make. And I suppose a lesson from many of our work is that providing just free energy audits, for example, will not work unless they're connected to financial incentives. I think it's very interesting to see the measures being introduced and mentioned from Austria, where financial supports are directly connected with measures to drive energy efficiency. So free advice is also part of the support, but that has to be connected to a pathway for the SME to deliver on energy efficiency. I think there is power in the numbers and the networks of SMEs. So SMEs do not have to try and learn from a blank page. There are using the networks of SMEs and building networks that focus on delivering on energy transition can be very important. I think, interestingly, it is very important to use the networks that SMEs are very used to, which are typically in the enterprise space. They don't know the people in the energy and the climate world, but we need to get the energy and the climate world to work directly with the people that in departments of enterprise, the enterprise networks, enterprise agencies, upskill those people within those agencies to deliver into the SMEs. And I think we need to use this opportunity and this challenge that we have to deliver on energy security in the very short and medium term to quickly move to energy transition roadmaps so that SMEs, and again, as all of our member states across Europe are moving towards, to move away from dependence on imported fossil fuels to one where we are energy independent. And that requires the SMEs to have a pathway to the future. It's very encouraging to see across member states. So the example, I am the chair of the board of the Tipperary Energy Agency based in Ireland, and our government has introduced specific support program, green business program, which has a range of tiered supports for SMEs, and other member states are introducing similar. That has to be aggressively promoted to the SMEs. They are very busy running their businesses. So the energy world that we live in is normally not on their radar. So we have to really clearly think about how we communicate with the SMEs. On behalf of Federen, we're very encouraged by the Commission's push in terms of Fit for 55. The Article 11 within the revised Energy Efficiency Directive has really positive actions proposed, which we hope to see transposed into reality very quickly. And to agree with the point in relation to training and skills, I would add the additional keyword in there and understanding of language. We have to keep the language simple and understandable for the business owners. Us engineers like the technology. We like to make things complicated. We have to make this as simple and as practical, and to agree with the executive director's point, as pragmatic as possible in the short term. The encouraging piece from my perspective is the SMEs that our members work with across Europe. SMEs have shown themselves to be incredibly resilient, but also incredibly agile. If we can create the conditions and give them the support, I'm very confident that we'll be able to implement these measures. And Federen and its members across Europe are very willing to work and support energy agencies across enterprises across Europe to deliver on these key challenges. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Seamus. So your remarks conclude our conversation today on how to increase resilience in small businesses in Europe through energy efficiency. We very much hope that this discussion will help spur a wider conversation on how energy efficiency can help small businesses in the current situation. And we at the IEA look forward to being involved in that conversation. And I'm sure all of our speakers here today do as well. So with that, I'd like to thank all of our participants, Commissioner Simpson, Dr. Birrell, Minister Gavesla, and the other great speakers. And I'd also like to thank all of you who have been following this conversation live online, this very important conversation. The materials that underpinned it, including the advice on practical steps that small businesses can take to improve energy efficiency, will be available on the IEA and European Commission websites. So we do invite you to go take a look there. And with that, thank you very much and goodbye.
you.